And now on Head Shop, I'd like you to meet a man who has made millions and millions and millions of people laugh. He is one of America's great clowns, one of the Three Stooges, Mo Howard. It's just great having you on Head Shop.
It's a delight to be here, sir.
What makes people laugh? What is the key to real humor?
Well, there are variations of ways to make people laugh. I can only speak of our basic ways of making people laugh. First of all, we do have a set formula, and that is the upsetting of dignity.
The upsetting of dignity.
In other words, if in our film a man walks by with a high hat, a monocle, spats, cane, gloves, this is a logical person who gets smashed right in the kisser with a pie. And the people love it and laugh because we have brought this man down to their level. But don't try to hit an old man, an old woman, or a child with a pie because they'll hate you from then on.
How many Three Stooges films are there in total? Approximately.
I'm not much on mathematics, you know.
I'm sorry.
I was a kindergarten dropout.
But I assume there were hundreds of them, weren't there?
Yes, there were about 204 of the Columbia comedies. We made half a dozen at MGM. And we did 156 cartoons of ourselves with live beginnings and live endings with the cartoon in the middle.
Do you think that humor is beginning to disappear in the American scene? Do you think that the times have made people too serious and that the days of Laurel and Hardy and the Three Stooges and Abbott and Costello will no longer be prevalent in our society?
I can't believe that such a thing would ever happen. When we get through with the sex problem on the screen, then I think we'll pick up where we left off before. Of course, unfortunately, all these great talents that you have mentioned are gone.
Yes.
It may take a long period of time for new ones to develop. Just like yourself are developing into a very fine and knowledgeable host, believe me.
Well, I appreciate that, thank you.
And
so you think there will be a resurgence of humor, there will be a resurgence of laughter?
there must be. Otherwise, this would be a sad continent.
You never used doubles, did you? I mean, it was always you three guys, wasn't it?
Yes, yes. Up to a time.
There was something I always was curious in all the Three Stooges films I've ever watched. Whenever you would hit each other, slap each other, or whatever, what was the way of doing that without people getting hurt all the time? Because you're always punching and everything, you know.
They got hurt.
No, they did.
Sure. Well, of course, after a certain amount of time, you develop a callus.
On the face?
On the face.
But there must be some technique.
Well, there is an additional soundtrack that builds up because you can smack a man as hard as you can. It's not going to come over strong enough. So they embellish that with the
kind of
sound up, yes. Like one time I gave Curly a slap. This was in vaudeville at the time.
Right.
And I was low on it. It was down around the chin. And he kind of got woozy a little bit. And I saw his eyes cross, so that's the first time we ever did it. We got into a football huddle. Just to wait till he got out of it, you know.
Right.
And when he did, he says, a little harder, they can't hear you. Of course, that was a dull thud here, see, and he couldn't figure out. So I let him have it harder so that people could hear him out there in front of the mic in the theater, you see. So incredible.
And it's really remarkable what you guys did. It's just sensational. What was the strangest place where you ever performed? You were talking about that earlier.
We did a benefit show at a mental institution, which we belonged in the first place. And while the boys were taking care of the setting of the stage, I walked around the grounds. And I tried to be very jovial, and the first fellow I met, I said, "Pardon me, I'm one of the Three Stooges, and we're going to entertain here tonight." He said, "Don't worry about it, kid. I was Napoleon when I got here." And I walked down a little ways, and there in front of a nice little cottage, there was a fellow walking around completely nude, except a little derby hat on his head, walking up and down. I walked up and said, "Hey, fella, you ought to look around carefully. You're walking around like that in the open where the public can see." He says, "Oh, nobody ever comes to see me." I said, "No, but walking up and down." He said, "Well, nobody comes to see me." So I said, "Why are you wearing a hat?" He says, "Well, that's in case somebody comes." I walked down a little distance down the end, and there was a fellow painting a wall, a brick wall. Must have been 140 feet long and about 8 feet high with a little artist brush.
Right.
He's painting away, and I'm standing there watching this fellow. He's turning around to me and said, "You know, you must think I'm silly or something." I said, No. He says, "Actually, I'm killing time here." have $200,000 in gold hidden up on the top of Lookout Mountain under a rock. Now, if you go up there and get it, he said, we'll split it and we'll go out and have a good time.
Right.
All right? He said, you go up Laurel Canyon Boulevard to Lookout Mountain Road, go up the hill. 20 paces to the right, you'll find a big pine tree. 20 paces behind that, there's a big boulder.
Right.
And under the boulder, there's the tin box with the money. Okay, so I went up there, got the whole deal, and sang. Finally, I come back and said, hey, buddy, something wrong someplace. No gold up there. He said, did you go up Laurel Canyon, left on Lookout Mountain? Did you find the pine tree? I said, yes. He said, you measure off 20 paces from the pine tree? I said, yes. I said, yes. He said, did you move the boulder and look? I said, yes. He says, go get yourself a brush.
That's lovely. That's lovely. Just by way of conclusion, because we only have a little while left.
Yes.
Is there anyone these days, Mo, any young comics, young comedians coming up who you really think are on to something funny? Do you find humor in any of the guys who are around today?
Well, if you're speaking of stand-up comedians, there are several who are very funny, but if you're speaking of a picture comic, not a comedian, I'm speaking of a comic. There's quite a difference, you know. A comic can take material and make it funny, whereas a comedian has to have funny material.
Sure.
I see no one at the moment that is built, according to my specifications, to be a comedian of the variety that I'm thinking of. He might be a light comedian, great. You know, there are many. But to be this type of comedian, I don't know. I don't think there's any formula for it. It's like a nightmare in Technicolor.
A nightmare in Technicolor. Any young people watching us, or older people watching us for that matter, who would like to become comedians, who would like to get into the comedic field, any advice from a master at the trade?
I can only say that they first have to determine what type of comedian they want to be.
Right.
And then if they want it bad enough and work at it hard enough, they can't miss.
They can't miss.
Absolutely not. But the suffering is still there in the early stages, no question about that. The best of us have suffered in the early stages.
But you really think that if somebody applies themselves, and
yes,
they'll
no
make it.
question about it.
And you indicated earlier that the world is ripe now for the new comedians.
No question. Would you like to see something?
I would love to see something.
There's
the look. There's the look. Can we see that? No, that's not the look. That's the look. Yeah. That's great. Do you know you look almost you look almost exactly as you look on in the Three Stooges film.
That almost is a very tricky word, you know.
Thanks a million.
It's been a pleasure.
Here are your glasses.
Let everybody go. I think I'll leave the studio this way.
Okay, thank you, Mo. It's just been wonderful having you with us on Head Shop.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be with you, sir.
That's it for Head Shop today. I want to thank our special guest, Mo Howard, of course, of the Three Stooges.